When discussing which MMOs are worth playing, Star Wars The Old Republic is more often than not quickly dismissed or not even brought up, which I think is unfortunate because even though the game isn't perfect, it is definitely worthy of consideration. I've been playing SWTOR on and off for years now, and recently made it my main MMO, so in this video I want to give you a comprehensive idea of what the endgame looks like, and help you determine whether SWTOR is an MMO worth playing for you. As an RPG, SWTOR is fantastic and is 100% worth playing in that regard. If you are a fan of Star Wars or the Old Republic era, you will almost certainly enjoy this game. The free trial is extremely generous, giving you access to all 8 class stories completely for free, and in order to unlock all the expansions, you simply need to subscribe one time, and you get to keep all the expansions forever, even if your sub lapses. So if you think you might like it as an RPG, you really have nothing to lose by trying. In my opinion, most of the class stories and expansions are worth experiencing at least once, so I highly recommend it as an RPG. With that said, let's talk about the game as an MMO. One of the most important aspects of any MMO is its core gameplay. MMOs are meant to be played for hundreds, if not thousands of hours, so having fun gameplay is kinda required. Fortunately, SWTOR definitely delivers on that front. As you can probably tell based on the footage, the game uses tab targeting combat, where you use a variety of abilities associated with keys on your keyboard. Some people love tab targeting and some people hate it, but regardless, this is a fantastic implementation of this combat style, largely because of the excellent class design. SWTOR easily has some of my favorite classes in any MMO I have ever played. I particularly love the Deception Assassin, the Lightning Sork, and the Arsenal Mercenary. There is a huge amount of variety in how these classes play. The Sith Marauder gets up close and personal and is an extremely fast-paced builder-spender, while the Sniper hides behind cover and has a far more methodical rotation. This means that playing alts is a great experience, as no two classes feel the same. Due to the classes feeling so different to play, I would highly recommend messing around with a few before picking a main, but there are plenty of great options. Compared to other tab targeting MMOs, SWTOR's combat does feel a fair bit less impactful than its contemporaries, largely due to the animations not having the same punch as something like WoW, but it is still exceedingly fun and well designed. I probably have at least 1,000 hours in game at this point, and I still really enjoy the combat. While class gameplay is great with engaging rotations, your combat skills will rarely be put to the test outside of group content. Yes, just like most other MMOs, the open world and solo content of SWTOR is pathetically easy. In SWTOR's case, your companion completely trivializes most solo encounters. That doesn't mean it isn't fun to do solo content, but it does mean that death is rarely a possibility. There is challenge to be found in group activities at the endgame, as well as some solo encounters, but SWTOR offers very little in the way of solo challenge. Before I jump into the content of SWTOR, let's talk about the design philosophy underpinning it, as that is one of the most appealing aspects of this game. SWTOR is very hands-off. Where most other MMOs try to keep you logging in daily or weekly, it doesn't really feel like SWTOR cares how much you play. Don't get me wrong, there are reward systems that incentivize you to log in consistently, we'll talk about those more later, but even those are extremely low pressure. If you want to drop off the game for a month or two, the game will not punish you for doing so. SWTOR rarely utilizes the fear of missing out to motivate gameplay, instead it leaves a lot of work up to the evergreen rewards and the player's intrinsic motivation. This means that generally speaking, you won't feel forced to play the game, and can instead work towards goals at your own pace. One factor that contributes to this is that all the game's content is evergreen, meaning that you'll be able to see all the content the game has ever had to offer at all times. The old content isn't invalidated by new content, so you never have to worry about a new Flashpoint or Daily Hub being removed or made obsolete before you can experience it. Additionally, the gearing process isn't limited to just doing the new content, but we'll talk about the gearing later. One of the most surprising things about SWTOR is that the game can be easily enjoyed when you aren't subscribed. While the subscription does have many quality of life benefits and is required to access operations, it isn't required to enjoy the endgame. Canceling your sub doesn't lock you out of the game, and you can still do pretty much everything. If you're playing a ton, the sub will definitely be worth it, but you can still have a great experience while unsubbed. So if you get super busy with work or school, you can simply cancel your sub and still enjoy the game when you have free time, without the pressure and obligation that comes with a subscription. All this comes together to make SWTOR a very approachable game. You aren't forced to play it, at the same time, you don't need to constantly spend money in order to enjoy it. This is one of the major reasons I always come back to SWTOR. Compared to other games which require constant subscriptions, SWTOR is just way more casual friendly, and the focus on evergreen content and rewards greatly reduces the fear of missing out that is so often associated with playing MMOs. So we have fun gameplay and a great design philosophy. That's awesome, but it doesn't really matter if there's no fun content to take part in, so let's talk about SWTOR's content. Flashpoints are SWTOR's versions of dungeons, and they are, for the most part, fantastic. They're generally well paced and really fun to take part in, with mechanics that tend to be fairly simple, but fun to engage with. and given that this game is set in the Old Republic era, they tend to be very thematically strong. They do have a few issues though. One is that flashpoints never really get too challenging. On Master Mode, they definitely require better execution and for your group to deal with mechanics, but if you're looking for a challenge equivalent to doing high keys in something like WoW, you won't find it here. Another issue with flashpoints are the skips. In principle, I don't mind them. However, some of the skips require you to follow a very specific path, and because the community has been playing the same flashpoints for so long, most of the skips have become common knowledge and are now used in most match-made groups. When everyone knows what's happening, it's fine, but I've seen many new players get left behind, and when I was first getting into the game and still learning the skips, I always felt anxious that I was going to pull something. And certain flashpoints just have an absurd number of skips, to the point where the Battle of Ilum should probably be renamed to the Battle of Running Past Stuff. The final issue is that there is a lot of variance in flashpoints, from duration to tuning, which can result in people leaving once they realize what flashpoint they got. It's fairly rare for this to occur, but it did happen to me while I was recording footage for this video, so there you go. Ultimately, these issues are fairly minor, and while I wish skips were less prevalent and flashpoints were a little more challenging, I still have a fantastic time jumping into flashpoints as they are really well designed. Operations are SWTOR's raids, and like flashpoints, they are really fun, but they definitely offer more of a challenge, especially in Master Mode. Operations are a part of the game that I admittedly haven't gotten very deep into yet. I've fully completed a few of them on Veteran, but it's definitely something I want to get back into. What I can say is that I've had a great time with the fights that I've done so far, and I look forward to doing more fights in the future. The mechanics in Operations tend to be less complicated than the raids in something like WoW, but they are still extremely fun. If you're looking for a raiding experience in SWTOR, Operations are really good, but be aware that new operations are a rarity, so once you progress through the currently available ops, you'll be waiting a while for new ones. Moving away from the instance group-based content, let's talk about the world content SWTOR has to offer, which is primarily made up of daily hubs. These hubs are pretty standard fare as far as daily hubs go, and you won't find them pushing any new boundaries. But I think the world content in this game is fantastic. It's your basic kill and collect quests, but each daily hub is really thematically strong, from fighting the Dread Masters on Oricon to dealing with the political squabbles on Onderon. The thematic strength combined with the fun core gameplay makes these daily hubs a joy to do. Additionally, most of these daily hubs have an associated reputation that you can rank up with for a variety of cosmetic rewards. You also have access to heroic missions on each of the planets that initially launch with the game. These are basically just dailies, but a little bit harder. Kinda. It's negligible. The only other major form of world content is world bosses. Unfortunately, there isn't much of a reason to do these unless it happens to be a Galactic Seasons objective. We'll talk about Galactic Seasons later, but it's rather hard to find groups for world bosses. But when you do, there's some fun spectacle, however most of them go down without too much trouble. It would be nice if there was a little more innovation in the world content, but I can't really complain as I have had a fantastic time with the new daily hubs on Manon and Runic, and I'm actively looking forward to new ones. Player versus player combat is something that I have never really cared about in MMOs. Well, that is until recently, because I have been having an amazing time with SWTOR's PvP. Ranked PvP was recently removed from the game and replaced with a new seasonal reward track. As a result, I gave PvP another shot, and for whatever reason, it clicked with me this time. You have access to arenas and war zones. Arenas are exactly what you expect. They're a good 4v4 mode, but I really don't have much to say about them. War zones, on the other hand, are larger scale group battles that are very objective oriented, from capturing turrets to sieging a capital ship. One of my favorite Warzone maps is the Ancient Hypergate. In this Warzone, you're attempting to get more points than your enemy by capturing pylons located on either side of the map, banking energy orbs in a captured pylon, or killing enemy players. Every 2 minutes and 30 seconds, the pylons will explode, at which point everyone has to take shelter in the bunker in the middle of the map, and the pylons get reset. I love this map because there are so many different ways to get points. It's a combination of capture the flag, point capture, and deathmatch, and it works surprisingly well. The issue with Warzones being very objective-oriented is that you are very often at the mercy of your teammates. You can play objectives as much as you want, but if your team is deathmatching in the center of the map, you are going to lose. It's really funny when your enemies aren't paying attention and they walk right past you as you're hacking their turret. It's much less funny when your teammate does the exact same thing. This gets especially annoying in Hutball. The objective is to pass the ball around and get it to the goal located at the enemy's base. But most of the player base doesn't understand this game mode very well, and rather than playing the objective, just run around fighting random people, losing the game. Hutball is really fun, but only when both teams are playing objectives, which is really rare. In spite of some of the annoyances that come with Warzones, I've had a great time with them. I really like the objective-based gameplay, and the classes feel so good to play in PvP. That said, the PvP community in SWTOR can be really toxic. At least 1 in 5 games results in profanities being hurled back and forth in ops chat. While that's not rare in PvP games by any stretch, the issue is compounded by the fact that the PvP player base is on the smaller side, meaning that you'll be seeing many of the same people from game to game, which can be great for building a sense of community, but it sucks when you just keep getting that one guy that always just AFKs and is an asshole. The new PvP season structure that just got added seems like it has a lot of promise. You gain points by playing PvP and slowly unlock this reward track, but presently the system feels rather grindy as it takes a good few hours of PvP to max out your points for the week. Since this is the first season of the system, I'm holding out hope that the grind will be reduced in future seasons, but we'll see. One of the most disappointing aspects about SWTOR's PvP is that the factions are mixed, meaning that you play with both Republic and Imperial players, while also fighting both Republic and Imperial players. This was obviously done due to the game's smaller population, and what I can only presume is a fairly massive faction imbalance, but while this doesn't functionally alter the gameplay, it does destroy the fantasy of fighting for your faction, and in a Star Wars game, that could have been a pretty big bonus. Another disappointing aspect of PvP for me is that the gear from Operations is better for PvP than PvP gear. You can get by fine without ops gear, especially since there's no ranked, but I hate it when that's a thing in MMOs. Oh yeah, and there's World PvP, I almost forgot about that. It's pretty much dead. I'm sure there are some guilds that host World PvP battles, but you won't naturally find much World PvP on your own. Every time I've loaded into a World PvP phase, it has been a total ghost town. Overall, the lack of a rank system means that you will only be able to go so far in PvP, but for what is here, I think it's kinda perfect from a casual perspective. You can hop on and work towards cosmetics and not need to worry about climbing the ranks. You don't need to be subbed and the queues aren't too bad. So if you're looking for an MMO to casually PvP in, SWTOR might be worth a look. While those are the main forms of content in SWTOR, there's a lot more. It would take way too long to go into detail on everything, so I'll quickly mention the highlights. There are starship battles, you have Star Fox style on-rail shooter missions, which are pretty fun, as well as an all-out space combat PvP mode, which I am very good at. My skills aside, I've heard great things about this game mode, but I don't presently understand it enough to enjoy it. Maybe one day. There are loads of events that come and go, each having a host of unique rewards to work towards. For solo challenges, you have the Eternal Championship, which pits you against a number of challenging bosses. I really enjoyed doing this on my main, and I can't wait to do it on alts. You can do the story chapters of the Knights of the Fallen Empire and the Eternal Empire expansions on Master Mode. I recently did these, and they were pretty brutal at times, but very fun. Uprisings are basically shorter flashpoints, they're pretty good, Star Fortresses are a thing, and look, I think you get the idea. There's a lot to do in this game. So, there's plenty of great high quality content backed up by fun gameplay and an awesome design philosophy. But, what about the endgame systems? Let's start with gearing. Gearing in SWTOR is good, but it has some major issues. The previous expansion Onslaught had a very simple and satisfying gearing process that was unfortunately thrown out with the most recent expansion, Legacy of the Sith. Basically, the way gearing works now is that you get an item and upgrade it with a multitude of currencies that come from different content. If you want to upgrade Flashpoint gear, run Flashpoints. If you want to upgrade Operations gear, run Operations. You get the idea. And to give you more options in how you gear, you can exchange some currencies for different currencies. Then, once you have a piece maxed out, you apply an augment to it. Now, that sounds simple, but the new gearing system is unnecessarily hard to understand due to there being too many currencies and many different restrictions and rules on gear, like how legendary implants max out at item rating 334, while other gear can go higher. I'll refrain from going into too much detail to not confuse you, but the takeaway is that Operations gear is pretty much the best gear for almost all content. The system can be really hard to wrap your head around at first, but it really isn't too complicated once you understand it. It's not a negative per se, but it also isn't a massive positive. It's a fairly inoffensive deterministic gearing system that is too complicated for its own good. It's been significantly improved since the launch of Legacy of the Sith, so they are taking feedback, but it still feels vastly inferior to what came before, at least to me. There is one great thing about this gearing system though. It is super easy to get your alts item rating 336 gear thanks to these vendors, which sell mod components. Don't worry about what mod components are right now, just know they make gearing alts way less grindy, and it's awesome. So, gearing in SWTOR has its downsides, but once you understand it, it's not too bad, and can even be fun to work through. Or, that's what I would be saying, if it wasn't for augments. So, augments are crafted stat bonuses that you slot into your gear. They aren't required for most content in the game, but allow players to further min-max their characters. They keep crew skills, or professions, relevant into the endgame, but there is one major issue with augments. And that's inflation. SWTOR's economy is screwed. To my understanding, this is because of credit duping bugs, but to give you an idea of how bad the inflation is, in early 2020 the Callous Conqueror's armor set, which is a highly sought after cosmetic, was selling for between 50 and 80 million credits on the Galactic Trade Network, or GTN. Now, in 2023, single pieces of the armor set, not even the full armor set, are listed for 850 million credits. You can't even get the full set on the GTN because you can only sell items for up to 1 billion credits, and the full set is worth way more than that now. This has gotten insane over the past few years, and the unfortunate side effect for gearing is that augments now cost 95 million credits, with the kits required to install them costing 70 million credits. Which means it will cost around 170 million credits to apply an augment to a piece of armor. Oh, yeah, and each of your 14 armor slots can be augmented, bringing the total to 2.4 billion credits to fully augment a single character. Again, augments aren't required for most things in SWTOR, but them costing this much is almost certainly driving new players away from stepping into harder content. You can make them yourself, but it's a fairly long grind, and you can buy them, but I doubt new players are looking to get into credit making. Oh yeah, did I mention that all that was just for the purple augments? And there's even more expensive gold augments? So yeah, augments suck. They used to be cool when they only cost a few million credits per slot, but this is entirely unobtainable for new and average players, and I honestly hope they get removed from the game in the next expansion, or at the very least move to a vendor where they are sold for a flat rate, because the current situation is awful. While this is a pretty big negative, it only really matters if you're planning on going into high-end operations, or you really care about getting the most out of your character in PvP. You can be completely fine without augments, but regardless, it does still feel bad to know that your character isn't at their full potential. This doesn't ruin the gearing in SWTOR, but in my opinion, it is a fairly massive downside. Since I brought them up, I suppose I should probably touch on the crew skills. There isn't too much to say on them, as they are pretty much exactly what you expect. They're pretty rewarding to work through, and if you commit to them, they're a pretty good moneymaker. Okay, let's move on to something more positive and talk about alts. Playing alts in SWTOR is a great time. As previously mentioned, classes feel really distinctive, so playing alts is an awesome change of pace. And it helps that they are really easy to gear up. SWTOR is actually one of, if not the most alt-friendly MMO I have ever played. But what makes SWTOR great is that it doesn't just allow you to play alts, it rewards you for doing so. There's a system called Conquest, and the basic gist is that each week you work towards getting 100,000 Conquest points by completing any activity and doing Conquest objectives. Hitting this cap is really quick and easy, and as a reward you get a bunch of useful supplies. What's great about this is that it's character specific, meaning that you can hit Conquest cap on as many alts as you want, and get even more rewards. This system is brilliant because it encourages you to play alts, but it also revitalizes old content through the Conquest objectives, by giving you a reason to do it. I've hit max rank with most of the reputations in the game, but I still go back and do the old daily hubs for Conquest on a regular basis. Because of this system, all the content in the game isn't just doable, it's relevant. Going for Conquest on multiple characters can help you unlock cosmetics, or make credits, or even gear up faster, but it isn't required. As someone who loves playing alts, I adore having an actual reason to hop around between loads of different characters and having different things to do on all of them, while simultaneously not feeling obligated to do any of it. This system is easily one of my favorite things about the game because it motivates gameplay while encouraging variety. Another important feature to SWTOR's endgame is Galactic Seasons. This is more or less a battle pass that you work towards by completing weekly objectives. Similar to the Conquest system, these weekly objectives encourage you to do content that you normally wouldn't take part in, and it keeps the gameplay experience really varied. There's a free tier to Galactic Seasons and a subscriber tier, but you can progress the season while unsubscribed, then subscribe at the end after you've unlocked everything and retroactively claim all the rewards. On top of that, there is very little fear of missing out attached to this system, because the seasons last so long. I haven't actively been playing SWTOR for most of the current Galactic season, but after being back for only a month, I'm almost fully caught up. If you end up getting too far behind, you can even buy your way up to the current tier using credits. Sadly, this is a credit sink, and because of inflation, it costs way too much, but still. This system isn't anything revolutionary, but the way it encourages you to take part in a variety of experiences while rewarding you with everything from cosmetics to cash shop currency is fantastic. With all of those systems covered, you can start to get a picture of what the endgame looks like. If you're still gearing, simply play the type of content that you want to gear through. For weeklies, you can log on, work towards Conquest on your main, knock out the Galactic Season objectives, and if you care about PvP, you can work towards the weekly PvP cap. Then just do whatever you want. For me, this normally means working towards Conquest on alts so I can buy cosmetics off this vendor. It's really that simple. There isn't a huge checklist of things you need to do. You just work towards whatever you want, and because of the game's evergreen nature, there's no rush to gear or get into operations. You can take the game at your own pace, and I love that. This in-game structure isn't for everyone, but I love that there are a million things I could do, but nothing I have to do. I'm encouraged to play the game, I'm rewarded for playing the game, but I'm not forced to. I've actually left out one major aspect of the endgame. Some might even say the most important aspect of the endgame. The cosmetics. You've been watching the video, right? Okay, great. So I don't need to tell you that the cosmetics in this game are fantastic. Most of the armor sets look incredible, but what's really cool is how the outfitter works. Basically, you can save any combination of items in an outfit slot. It will cost a small amount of credits, and then it is saved. After that, you can swap between your saved outfit slots whenever you want, completely free of charge. As someone who struggled to stick with a single transmog for more than an hour in WoW, I love this. Gone is the guilt of constantly changing outfits. Additionally, you can use the Unify color feature to match all of your gear to the color of your chest, allowing you to mix and match gear your heart's content. On top of that, you can dye your chest, and when combined with the Unify color tool, this lets you completely change the color of your armor. And there are no limitations on armor type, so you can wear trooper armor as a Sith if you want to. This is one of the most versatile cosmetic systems I have ever seen in a game, and I love it. Collecting new armor to use in new outfits motivates a large amount of my gameplay. Outfits aren't the only form of cosmetic in the game though. You also have different emotes, titles, toys, heck, you can even get a new animation for your health restore ability, and so much more. There are plenty of cosmetics to work towards in SWTOR. On top of that, you also have access to strongholds or player housing. You can purchase multiple strongholds to decorate, and the stronghold system gives you a ton of freedom in how you decorate your home. With a countless number of decorations in the game, this system can give you plenty to do. Cosmetics in SWTOR are great, but as you might have guessed, a large portion of cosmetics are locked behind the cash shop, the cartel market. Thankfully, they can be traded amongst players, meaning that if you want a cash shop item, you can simply buy it with credits. Starting out, this will definitely be hard thanks to the insane inflation, but there are plenty of ways to make credits. A large amount of my gameplay over the years has been saving up credits by selling crafting mats I got through Conquest in order to buy cosmetics off the GTN. It really sucks that there are so many cosmetics locked behind the cash shop, but in a way, it gives players long-term goals to work towards. So as long as Conquest is a great way to make credits, all you need to do to work towards cosmetics, even cash shop cosmetics, is just play the game. Overall, the cosmetic systems in SWTOR are great. They allow for copious amounts of player expression, while also motivating a ton of gameplay. I know a lot of people who play this game exclusively to make cool outfits and decorate their strongholds. Well, it's about time we talked about the monetization, isn't it? Outside of the cartel market, the monetization is phenomenal. The fact that you don't have to buy expansions, and that you don't even need to be subbed to the game, is almost too good to be true. The cartel market isn't the worst cash shop I've ever seen, and it gets a lot of points for making cartel market items tradable. But at the same time, it locks an absurd number of cosmetics behind the cash shop, which certainly isn't ideal. The two most predatory things that I've noticed about this game's monetization is that dyes are consumed on use, and buying a cosmetic doesn't unlock it for your entire account, and you have to pay a second fee in order to unlock it for all your characters, which is such a scummy tactic. However, I'm able to overlook all this on a personal level for two main reasons. One, the game has a great value for money proposition, and being able to play for free is just really great. And two, I know that this cash shop is what keeps the game alive, and without it, the game probably wouldn't still be around. I wish there were more cosmetics locked behind the game instead of the cash shop, but there are still plenty of great cosmetics to earn in game, and the overbearing cash shop allows the monetization to be less aggressive in other areas. I also should take a second to acknowledge the insane amount of cartel coins I have. I made a video about the game back in 2020 that blew up. I put a referral link in the description that gave me a kickback of cartel coins whenever someone subscribed using my link, and that's why I have so many. They sunset the system since that video, but I wanted to address it as it no doubt raised a few eyebrows. One of the final things we need to talk about with regard to SWTOR is the health of the game. It's pretty common knowledge that SWTOR doesn't get a large amount of development resources and is clearly not a priority for whoever's in charge, which leads to relatively infrequent updates. The cadence of content in SWTOR is really slow, and that is something you should know going in. Don't expect updates to completely revolutionize the game, and don't expect them to be frequent. What we do get tends to be very high quality, but lacking in quantity. One downside of this is that it is very easy to burn out a SWTOR, because the pool of available content just doesn't change. So if you play a lot, you're obviously going to burn out. The population of the game is also on the lower end. According to Steam charts, it has a concurrent player base of around 4,500 players. While that seems really bad, SWTOR came to Steam in 2020, and most of the longtime players I know, including myself, use the launcher instead of Steam, so the Steam charts don't accurately represent the size of the player base, although it is definitely on the smaller end. I will take a moment to point out that for theme park MMOs like SWTOR, the player base size really isn't that important. As long as you can find groups to get into content with, how many other players are online is entirely irrelevant. Speaking from personal experience, queues pop very quickly and it's pretty easy to find a group for most content in the game. If you want to do something really niche, well, that's where friends come in handy. Normally, the low population numbers and the lack of consistent updates would be a really bad sign for the future of the game. But it doesn't seem like the game is going anywhere anytime soon. SWTOR is just now getting a 64-bit client, which reportedly improves on the game's performance. Additionally, a large number of changes in recent years have been focused on UI changes or quality of life changes that realistically wouldn't be getting done if the game was on the verge of shutting down. So I don't think you have anything to worry about in that regard, and SWTOR seems like it still has a long life ahead of it, at least for now. Before we wrap this up, I wanted to briefly mention that the community in SWTOR tends to be very welcoming, as this is a very niche game, so most people are just happy to have other people playing it. But as with any community, you are going to find a few toxic people, but they should be few and far between, unless you do PvP. I also want to point out that role-playing is a big thing for a lot of people in this game. It's not something I do or really have any desire to do, but if you're interested in it, to my knowledge, SWTOR has a pretty strong roleplay community. So, in conclusion, do I recommend that you try Star Wars: The Old Republic? Short term? Hell yeah. While the game has its issues, it is exceedingly fun and is a fantastic game. If you've never gone through the storylines, that is definitely worth doing, and if you've never gotten into the endgame, I would say that is absolutely worth doing at least once to see all the content. In the long term, however, the answer is a little bit more complicated, and it really depends on what you want out of the game. I've played the game for years and only recently made it my main MMO, and that's because what I want out of MMOs has changed. Before, I wanted a game I could play for an absurd number of hours and do really hard high-end content in, so I played WoW. But now, I just kind of want a chill game that I can keep coming back to, but without the commitment and pressure and FOMO that comes with playing other MMOs. If the low-stakes, hands-off nature of the game sounds appealing to you, then by all means, give it a go. The game's great. But if you want a game that you can play for hours and hours every day and dedicate your life to, SWTOR can support that for a while, but eventually you'll either burn out or run out of stuff to do. So, in summary, yes! SWTOR is absolutely worth playing as an MMO in 2023 because of its excellent combat, superb content, brilliant design philosophy, engaging progression systems, wealth of player expression, and so much more. I absolutely adore this game, and as I said at the start, it is definitely worthy of consideration. Alright, thanks for watching. If you liked the video, like it, share this video with people you think might be interested in SWTOR, do all the YouTube stuff. My plan with the channel is to make SWTOR videos interspersed with video essays about other media and stuff that interest me, so if any of that sounds interesting to you, go ahead and subscribe, and feel free to join my Discord. I'm fairly active in there. With all that said, I'll see y'all in the next video. Bye.